Hale will get some football updates with you, and then might dabble in some Big Ten SEC stuff with you here just a little bit. But you actually a couple of days ago you wrote a column that kind of coincides with a conversation that we had with John Strickland yesterday, and I'm glad that you wrote it because it really I think it really sheds light on you just don't know when it comes to the transfer portal, right? In South Carolina last year really ended up having a phenomenal class. And you look at the combine this year and how many of those guys have been invited to the combine, and the fact that maybe when some of them committed to play for the Gamecocks out of the portal, they weren't huge names, largely unknown. I mean, I remember Demetrius Knight, people were kind of questioning why is there a linebacker coming here from Charlotte. But overall, and they've certainly signed some kids from the portal that have not had the impact that some of the others have. That's going to be the case at every school in the country. But overall, they've actually done a pretty nice job. Their track record's pretty good under Shane Beamer in identifying talent in the transfer portal, no matter where they're coming from. And then these guys have been able to come to South Carolina and make an impact on winning games and a personal impact on going to the next level and things like that. So in saying all of that, how do you apply that message moving forward for fans?
I think every year is going to be different when you're talking about the portal, because just sort of the nature of the beast and the ever changing rules and what you can do, and just the simple fact that the portal window itself is smaller and there are less days to get in than there were 2 years ago. There are always going to be different variables in play, or at least there have been to this point. I guess they're trying to eliminate some of that right now. But there are different circumstances every year. And I guess if you try to compare, say, this 2025 transfer class to the 24 class, if you start with the obvious, it's much smaller in terms of the number of guys who are just in the class itself. I mean, it's almost half the size. It's, I think, 13 total transfers on the team right now who first-year transfers, whereas there were almost, I think it was 12 of the 22 or so, if you count the guys who were brought in as walk-ons. You had almost as many guys joining the team in 2024 who were going to be one-and-done type of transfers. Like, they just have one season of eligibility left. Whereas now there are a couple of guys in this 25 class, but there's only 13 total guys in the class. So it's like, it's just composed very differently. And some of that is maybe a product of the football staff, the coaching staff being able to retain a lot of quality players from last year and keep them on the team for this upcoming season. So all that to say, like, it's going to look different next year when we're talking about the transfer class compared to this year, more than likely. Like, you just got to realize, folks need to realize, like, hey, because you got Rocket Sanders and Torres Ellie Simpkins and Demetrius Knight and Kyle Kennard, guys like that who came in and made an immediate difference and were superstars. Like, you may not necessarily have that with this group, at least that number of guys. You may not necessarily have that in 2025 and 2025. Some of the value with this current class could be like beyond this season, because there are so many guys from a percentage standpoint. It's a much higher percentage of guys who in theory are going to be around more than just one season. And while some of those guys will play and make a difference and maybe even be superstars at some point this year, that you're going to get more value out of them in terms of, like, you're going to have them for more than one season. So it's just, I don't know if I answer your question, JB, but I think that's just the one thing that I've kind of come up with and sort of identified as a way to try to analyze the two classes, just since they're the most recent ones we have to talk about.
No, I think it was a great answer. And I also think, too, that this staff has earned the benefit of the doubt to this point when it comes to reaching into the portal, Hale. I mean, they're always going to be that's college football it's not a sport, it's a lifestyle. I mean, anything that these coaches do, they're going to be questioned. Every player that comes in, they're going to be graded by people that have no business grading and judging players, but they're going to do it anyways. And that's what's so fun about it. So I think they've earned the benefit of the doubt that to be trusted to this point. I also, so I think tomorrow, I'm pretty sure it's tomorrow. Phil can confirm this, but I'm pretty sure tomorrow Darren Usher is going to be on with JC and Mad Dog. For those who are new to our programming, Mad Dog is actually Phil, and he's really not a mad person. I don't really know how we came up with that, but Darren's going to be on with them. Last time I talked to Darren, he really kind of opened the door a little bit to how they do evaluate Hale, and he mentioned that. You might have even wrote about this. I really can't remember what I did yesterday. So,
same.
But yeah, well, hey, when you've got babies, you're in the thick of it. I get it, especially sick ones. So God bless you and your dear wife as parents. But he had mentioned when the portal opens, right, and Hale McGranahan jumps in the portal, and this guy's a good player. You're late. You're late to the party. Yeah, you're behind the 8 ball. And he kind of explained, and because our program is watched by every administration in college football, I don't want to get too in the weeds here and give the secrets of South Carolina away. But he did explain the process, in which they basically have a board, and they follow kind of alongside PFF in the grades almost every player in the country throughout the year, right? They just kind of, it doesn't matter if none of these guys are in the portal. They're just playing football, and they just keep an eye on everything. And here are all the grades, so they know. All right, if that guy, because you don't ever know, you have no idea who's getting in the portal anymore. If he enters, you don't have to go do a bunch of research on this guy. You don't have to watch film. You've already seen it. You got it. You might need to see something else, of course, to confirm that this is the dude you want to talk to. But all the research is done, and it's almost like the NFL, right, Hale? Like you're scouting, like you've got a whole scouting department that is scouting the rest of the sport, even though they might not be free agents. You might need to trade or something. You got all kinds of stuff going on. It's just become the ultimate. This process has become so fascinating, and the potential additional shrinkage of the transfer portal. I would be very curious to have that conversation with those guys again and see how that process would reapply if that happens. I think it's going to happen, by the way.
Yeah, it sounds that way. It kind of goes back, JB, to what people sort of say generally when we're following a player's recruitment and he picks another school, and it's like, well, hey, you know what? It ended on a good enough note, like, hey, yeah, I didn't pick you, but no hard feelings. We have a good relationship. If you ever decide you want to get a new start somewhere else, keep us in mind. We'll be happy to have that conversation. And along the way, if you're the school, you're checking the PFF, you're seeing what the guy's doing, and if it's someone like a Jalen Brown or Justin Okoronkwo who you offered and went after while they're high school recruits, if they've progressed through their freshman year, like both of those guys just had, like, then you say, hey, you know what? We've already kind of done the groundwork on these guys. We know them. They know us. There's a relationship there. And you know what? The results that they've put out on tape and show up on these PFF grades kind of line up with what you would hope that they would be doing if they were developing within your own program, not somewhere else. So that's kind of another element to it. And we've seen a lot of guys who've transferred into South Carolina over the years since 2021 who have had previous relationships with guys on the staff. And it's like that across college football. It's no different with most places. So that's kind of a thing too, that, you know what, you establish relationships and sometimes they can come back and help you a few years down the road.
That's a great point. That's a great point. All right, Hale, let's move specifically to some of these players too. With the quarterbacks, okay? I know. I think you had written something about. Well, I'll let you get into that, but you do have a little bit of a quarterback update that came out. I think maybe in the VIP room the other night. But just an hour and 16 minutes ago, Tom Loy, of course, who is with 24/7 Sports, has a column out that says Tom Loy's 5 2026 football recruitments to watch in the South as the class heats up. 2 of those players are quarterbacks who are linked to South Carolina. Jared Curtis, Landon Duckworth. So give us the latest on the 2026 quarterback room. What's going on with the guys that they're recruiting. Any update you may have in addition to the updates that these guys are putting out?
Yeah, Jared Curtis and Landon Duckworth are 2 names that have been around for South Carolina in this 2026 quarterback recruiting cycle for more than a year now. Duckworth was obviously committed to Carolina, and while he was committed, the staff was still recruiting Jared Curtis pretty heavily, and he eventually committed to Georgia. Neither one of them are committed anywhere right now. Obviously, Duckworth is still considering South Carolina and has been since the day he decommitted. That hasn't ended, and it's sort of been the same with Jared Curtis in Georgia. Like, he decommitted from Georgia, but Georgia's still very much in the mix. That's usually not how it goes in recruiting, whether it's quarterback or any other position. Brady Smigel, who's the third 2026 quarterback who South Carolina's sort of got within its focus right now, was committed to Florida State, and he's no longer considering Florida State. They're not an option for him. So he's more just traditionally he's more of the norm that way. But yeah, Curtis has a bunch of official visits scheduled. I mentioned obviously Georgia, Oregon's very much a factor. There are some other schools as well that I think are kind of on the periphery with South Carolina, probably closer to that tier of Georgia and Oregon. In my mind, maybe not necessarily quite as in high regard as those 2 schools are for him. So then you kind of pivot to Duckworth, who is looking at Ole Miss. He's looking at Florida State, ironically enough, in relation to Smigel. The connection with Florida State for Duckworth is that Gus Malzahn, who's now the offensive coordinator, when he was the head coach at UCF just last year, there was a point when it looked like Duckworth was going to end up with UCF. And, obviously things changed there. So Florida State's a factor. Ole Miss is a factor as well. I think there are probably some other schools in that kind of category of maybe on the periphery, so to speak. I think Georgia's probably one of those with Duckworth. Then with Smigel, he's visiting here in about a month, visiting South Carolina for the first time. It'll be an unofficial visit. And he's not scheduled an official visit. That could change maybe before the end of that unofficial visit. So, yeah, I think that's probably the most relevant thing to kind of end on with this particular topic, KB, is that Smigel's coming in for a multi-day visit to South Carolina. He's got some other trips scheduled too, like Washington's a factor, Michigan as well, UCLA. But I think South Carolina's, even though they haven't had him in yet for any kind of a visit, I think South Carolina's in a really good spot for him, and I think they'll have a shot to only strengthen that while he's in town and look to get him scheduled for an official visit probably in June.
Is there any scenario at all where Carolina would take 2 guys?
Out of these 3?
Yes.
I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that would be an option for him.
Yeah.
So
I wouldn't imagine so. I just wanted to be.
Yeah, I mean,
clear.
I don't want to say no, they wouldn't do that if it was an option for him, but I just don't see that being.
Well, yeah, I'm not. I'm not an idiot. I mean, I don't think any of these guys are. They want to be the guy in the class, right? So
right.
I can't imagine any of them are. What is just really, truly fascinating here, though, is when you look at the composite, Curtis is at 1, Smigel's at 5, Duckworth's at 7. I can't remember a time in Carolina football history where they were legitimately in the door of 3 of the top 7, 3 of the top 10, whatever. You throw whatever number you want out there, 10, 15, I don't know, 20. The best quarterbacks in the country like this. I mean, they are having legitimate conversations with these guys. This is pretty wild.
Yeah, it's. I think it's unprecedented. To your point, I don't recall anything off the top of my head. Maybe there has been a time mean, I don't remember like when they were recruiting Steven Garcia. I don't remember who else they were in on then, but obviously he was a very highly rated guy. So if there was maybe somebody else they had a shot at back then, maybe there's a chance. Like when Luke Doty was a pretty high recruit, Ryan Helinski was too, and I actually covered those, and I don't really remember off the top of my head. Again, if I went back and started looking at the list, I could probably give a more accurate answer. But I don't. Yeah, I don't think this is uncharted territory, and there's no guarantee they'll get any of those three guys. I think that's one thing everyone needs to keep in mind, because I've seen on the Big Spurs message board, there's been quite a few folks over the last couple of weeks who are like, all right, well, we're definitely getting one of them. So like all good there. Well, I just want people to kind of pump the brakes a little bit. Like it's not a done deal that they're going to get Brady Smigel, or that Duckworth was going to jump back in the class, or Jared Curtis isn't going to go somewhere other than Georgia or Oregon. So, let's see how things play out. Let's see if Smigel has a good visit and schedules an official, and still South Carolina has to beat some other folks too to get him. But it's certainly unprecedented times where Carolina is recruiting at a level like this at the most important position, and I think that just kind of speaks to the success this coaching staff has had for the most part over the last 4 years.
Yeah, I can remember moments where there's been two. I mean, you mentioned some of the others. I mean, hell, even for a brief moment, very small, but even Tim Tebow had a little bit of interest around here. These of that group there, I mean, they're not. I'm trying to figure out how to word this, because I'm going to sound like an idiot if I don't word it right. It's not like they're recruiting it. These three going, well, these two guys really fit our system. This one doesn't, but he's a good player, so we'll take him anyways. Like, obviously, you're going to sign a quarterback that fits what you want to do. But as far as their styles go and what we know about them today, is there any big difference in those three based on your evaluations of them and things like that? Anything noteworthy?
I mean, I think the immediate assumption for some people might be that Smigel and Curtis aren't as athletic as Landon Duckworth. For obvious reasons, some people make that assumption. While Duckworth is, you watch the tape, you watch the highlights, you see how he dunks a basketball. Like, yeah, he is a really good athlete. And if you watch the tape and see Brady Smigel run around, like, he's not running quite as well as Landon Duckworth, but he's still a capable athlete. He can still move and get out of trouble in the pocket. And you may not be calling a bunch of design runs for him if he's your college quarterback, but he's still capable of doing those types of things. So, there are differences for sure, but I don't think it's as significant as one might just kind of assume for one reason or another.
Okay. Have you learned anything from anybody on staff or any sources you may have about the potential impacts of what's coming later on this summer with the settlement and all those type things, the financial angle of this? Have you learned anything at all there?
As far as
as far as how it's just affecting this next class and the classes beyond that. I mean, you wouldn't think it would have too much of an effect on it, but anything?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the specifics, so I don't want to try to misrepresent anything that way. But I mean, I think we all know that South Carolina is going to be as competitive as they're allowed to be in that space. So I think it's a matter of just kind of waiting to see what the SEC ends up deciding to agree that they're going to try to have their teams doing from that standpoint. From what I understand, I could be wrong, but from what I understand, like, just because guys are going to be able to get revenue shares, that doesn't mean that NIL deals are just going away and that collectives are no longer going to be in play. Like, as far as I know, like, those are still going to be around, and like, there are going to be opportunities for guys to and gals for athletes to make additional money beyond just the the revenue share. So like I don't think it's going to be as like even of a playing field as what it kind of appears to be on the surface with the revenue share. Again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just totally misunderstanding how this is going to look. But yeah, I can't speak to the specifics on these three quarterbacks and what they're looking for and who's best positioned for what. I do think we can all agree that we think that Georgia and Oregon are as competitive as anybody in the country, maybe probably more so than anybody in the country when it comes to being able to make stuff happen for their prospective student athletes.
All right, I'm gonna put you on the spot. You ready for this?
No, but go ahead.
Have you had enough coffee this morning to be able to give a good specific answer here? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. If you this is just for the fans here, because we love our fans. If you had to project the next commitment for South Carolina football, who would it be?
Oh man, I hate these questions.
I know, that's why I saved it for you. I'm not doing it to JC. He'll rattle off 19 names.
Well, I'm not going to give you a name because I don't want. I'm just not going to do it. I'm not doing it.
All right. How about a position group? Which position group would it come from?
So now I've been trying to think like who's actually close to making a decision. Like what guys have announced like, hey, I'm going to decide by this date, and there aren't really a ton of them. So I don't want to
think anybody has, right?
I mean, Contavious Anderson, the safety from Dorman is supposed to be doing something. I think it's in April. I think it's on his birthday. But I don't necessarily feel super great about him picking South Carolina, so I don't want to say him, especially because I think he's going to probably end up picking Clemson. So I don't really have, and that's not really groundbreaking by any stretch of the imagination. Me saying that. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to give you a name. Sorry. Or a position group, or I'll say it's a football player who's a male. And that's where I'll end it. Yeah.
Well, all right. Okay. We're getting closer.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing I was going to do is ask you which side of the ball, but obviously we're not going to do that either.
What if it was special teams?
Well, I mean, that would, I'll give you a pass.
How many sides are on a football, JB?
Well, there's 2.5.
Okay.
Special teams is right down the middle. So it's 2.5. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Anything we missed?
I don't know. What did you want? Do we have time to do this Big Ten SEC stuff that is getting people calling these conferences all sorts of snarky stuff?
Well, I tell you what. Do you have a couple minutes to spare?
Sure.
Okay. What we'll do is we'll hit a timeout because we do have to pay the bills. We don't want them to shut the lights and the water off around here. So let's pay the bills. The SEC and the Big Ten are meeting today in New Orleans and probably for the rest of the week. They're going to figure out everything. They're going to figure out everything: taxes, the future of college football. Hale. They're going to figure out everything. Okay.
Asteroid, the egg prices, all the stuff we see on Instagram.
All of it. Immigration reform. All the Sankey he's got it. But one of the things they will also discuss is, in addition to the fact that these two leagues are going to have the most power with the future of the CFP, there could be an SEC Big Ten football challenge in play here, right? Like you've got in basketball, which is a little bit different, but SEC Big Ten football challenge. So what I did was, because everybody cares about my opinion and my road trip schedule, because I'm that important to everybody, Hale.
Sure, yeah.
What I did was rank 18-1 if there was a challenge, where as a fan I would like to go in the Big Ten to watch a game. So I ranked it 18-1. Now I didn't put that on you, obviously, so I'm not going to ask you to do that or anything like that. That's So you got to think about it a little bit more than just during a commercial break. But when I come back, we'll play the game. We'll put Phil on the screen so he can tell me how wrong I am, and we'll play the game. We'll talk a little bit about this deal. How's that sound?
Perfect.
Because you might have to go. You might have to go cover a game and
get to go. Not have to, get to.
You might get to go.
Get to go, not have to go. Get to go.
You might get to fly into Newark, and go cover a game in Piscataway. Ugh.
Oh yeah, I like that.
So we'll talk about that. Hang tight. The morning show, powered by Electric Bikes of Charleston. We'll be right back.